Cool. I'm live. This is fun. Let's see. Is anybody here? Okay. Take a second to figure this out. Hi. Hi, Nabil. How's it going? Someone is here. So I have the Reddit spreadsheet pulled up. So in case we have like no questions, I can just answer those. So that's fun. Is this my mother? Hi, Mom. My mom is watching. You don't have to be here anymore. You can leave. Okay. I'm glad you're doing it well. And let's see. I think one of the interesting questions was, does a higher step 2 score matter? Oh, yes, question. Please answer. Ask away, I mean. Okay. So while I wait for Nabil to ask the question, maybe I'll just or answer one of them from the spreadsheet. So one was, any tips for applying both IR and DR as a safety? How can I make sure I don't rub the program the wrong way? I think this is a really great question. I think a lot of people have this question. And honestly, the answer is that different programs are going to react differently to you applying to both. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a great way to know like which programs really care. Some of them do. I know my program director said that he doesn't care. So it just depends. Obviously, for DR programs that don't have an IR, it's going to be different. But I think the main thing is to show your interest in both and talk about the different pathways to going to IR, that you would be willing to go integrated or through ESIR or as a fellowship, so you can keep it as open. Okay, so would going to a program with an in-house intern year be better than opposed to applying 2 separate residencies for radiology? Okay, so like, do you mean like going for like a categorical versus just radiology and intern year, so advanced? I think there are advantages to both. I don't think one is better than the other. Doing categorical can help you if you're interested in doing like you being on hospital committees, and if you're interested in getting involved at the hospital level, then like, getting involved as an intern is better than getting involved as a first year, but otherwise it doesn't matter. We have like one of my co-residents did her intern year at our hospital, and she just knows all of the medicine residents because she did her internship with them. But like, as far as like actual for your education and competency, I don't think it matters. It's just like you get to know your interns, and then they order all of your studies, so you get to know them, which is kind of nice. But other than that, I don't think it matters. And you don't have to move, so that can be an advantage. And that's pretty much it, though. I don't think it matters. I know in Michigan, where I'm from, like almost every program is categorical, which is like different than the rest of the country. So I applied to a lot of categorical programs and a lot of advanced, and I didn't rank, my rank list wasn't based on whether something was categorical or advanced. It was just like the program itself. It doesn't matter. Some of the programs you can even apply to as advanced, and then they have like their own internship, or some of them have like a couple of categorical spots and some advanced spots. I don't think it matters. Hey, David, what are some examples of recently clinically integrated AI? Ooh, okay, so there are a ton of applications for AI in radiology. I think the one that we hear about the most is like CAD, or computer assisted detection in mammography. We also have like CAD in our dual energy CT because it helps us find lung nodules. these are all, but you have to realize that AI a lot of times is as a check mechanism. Like we don't rely on it. It's more like, have I found all the lung nodules? Let me check the CAD. So to what extent do we rely on it? First year, we didn't have a dual energy CT and we had to find all of those things on our own. And then second year and third year, now I have it. And you don't really rely on AI right now in radiology. It helps us. Like when we got the CAD for the lung nodules, it's pretty nice, but it's not utilized like in the way that I think a lot of people think it is. That's a great question. And a lot of places are doing a lot of AI research. Like we're trying to include more AI research now. A lot of it got slowed down because of COVID, but it's very exciting. I think the major places where I'm excited to see AI in radiology are like in our workflow. So if it can like manage our lists better, if it can kind of filter, like filter the studies in a way that like either the most emergent ones are at the top, or if it can go through and see like, oh, this one has an urgent finding. But you don't really rely on it as a radiology resident. And also like they train us so that we don't need it, because as soon as you go from one institution to another, you're going to have a different set of tools available. You have to have that baseline knowledge. So it's not really used in that day-to-day practice like how a lot of people think, but it is there in some places and it is nice. And I hope that we get more, but it'll never replace radiology. It's just a really fun thing to see how like the CT scanner can pick up, not the CT scanner, the software can pick up like nodules and calcification on mammography and things like that. But I don't know if that answered your question. I will say some places obviously will be doing more. So like when I'm applying for a breast imaging fellowship, like some places are doing a ton of AI research and they're really involved with like figuring out how AI can like screen out normal screeners and things like that, versus some places are not using it at all. So it's very institution dependent as well. But really good question. If it didn't answer, just feel free to ask me in a different way. Sorry. I'm just going to go through the Reddit spreadsheet again. So are honors and core clerkships all weighted equally, or are IM and surgery seen with more weight? I think IM and surgery are definitely the most important. I always encourage everyone to get a letter from either IM or surgery if you can, or like P is one of the core clerkships, but those are definitely more important, I would say. That doesn't mean that if you get like honors in everything except for like surgery. Okay, good, that helps. And we're not going to be like, oh, she didn't get honors in surgery or IM, just in everything else. That's not what I mean. But oh, this is the question that I was trying to answer before. For those who matched, how important was your step 2 CK score? Was a jump in 20 plus points between step 1 and step 2 significant? Yes, anytime I see a step 1 score that's lower, the first thing I check is the step 2, because if it goes up, then I'm like satisfied. So I would say if you have a lower step 1, definitely try to get a higher step 2. How competitive are radiology fellowships? Great question. Do they depend a lot on where you went for residency? This is a really good question. And there are some specialties that are more competitive. So from what I understand, neuro and IR are the most competitive fellowships to get. And breast imaging is generally like there's always open spots. MSK, I think, is on the more competitive side. Does it matter where you go? So it can matter if like you're at a program that has an MSK fellowship or whatever fellowship that you want, then usually programs take their own residents kind of first, unless you have like a big red flag and they don't like you or something. You usually have the first pick. And it's like an informal interview. It's like, do you want it? Let's do like a fake interview and then you get the spot, versus like someone from outside has to go through the whole, apply and get letters and, the whole thing. So it does matter if you want to do fellowship at the institution where you do residency, because then you basically are a shoo-in for that fellowship spot. I also think it's nice to be in a place like Boston or, places with a lot of programs, because a lot of people know each other in these areas. So like Northeast, for example, everyone knows each other. New York City, people know each other. So it can help if you go to a program in those cities, and then if you want a fellowship at a different institution in the same city, that can help you too. As far as like, does it matter like if you go to a small program to go to a big fellowship? No, I think that if you are a hard worker, you get great letters, something I encourage people to do is like do projects with people at larger institutions to help, get to know them. So there's definitely ways around it. But in terms of like doing fellowship at the same institution will obviously help if you're at that place to begin with. But they're not hard to get into though. Like I think everyone pretty much gets the fellowship that they want. Maybe IR is the exception to that, but most people, 99.9% of people ended up getting what they want. And I will say, only a few of the fellowships are matches. Like body imaging, for example, is not a match. It's just, it's a handshake. So you interview and then you have like a few days to figure out if you're going to sign with them or not. So in those places, it's very easy. Like if you know someone at an institution, things like that, it's very important to make those connections early because they will offer you a spot very soon. How do you spend your days as a radiology resident? How is it variable from residency to residency? So I will say radiology residencies across the board are more chill than like other residencies like medicine or surgery. Most of us have like shifts. So usually we'll have didactics either in the morning and at noon or at noon and in the afternoon. That's what I remember from when I was interviewing. So we're very didactics heavy. And as far as like how it varies from different programs, they're pretty similar. So I'll tell you about ours. We do didactics from 7:30 until 9 in the morning, and then again at 12 to 1. And between 9 and 12, you're just like at the workstation reading studies. And from 12 or from 1 to 5, you're doing the same thing. And pretty much at 5, there's an evening shift. So one person is always on evening from 5 to 9, and then one person works the overnight after 9 p.m. until the next morning. So I feel like that breakdown is pretty similar across the board. And some places, instead of doing like morning didactics, will do didactics at like 4 to 5 p.m. or like 3 to 4. It's pretty similar though from each program to program. It also depends on how many sites your residents are covering. So that can be something you ask on interviews. Like if you have like 4 different sites, then potentially that could be like 4 different daily schedules that the residents have. We don't really have that. We just have one site that we cover. So I can't really speak to it. Radiology call. Radiology call is unlike call in other specialties. Generally, like on medicine and ICU even, you can either have like a very slow night where you don't really get paged that much, or you can obviously have a busy night where you're getting paged all the time. Radiology is generally always busy because if you think about it, people are always coming into the ER. On top of that, people are upstairs, a patient fell out of his bed, a patient is now acutely short of breath. So anytime something is happening on the floors or in the ED, they're going to get a radiology study, and then it's up to you to read it within a timely fashion. So radiology call is pretty stressful because it's nonstop. You're not really like getting a break unless everything happens to be very quiet and like people are not coming to the ER and things like that, which is rare. It's also stressful because you're making the call on your own. So like if someone comes in with appendicitis, the chances of them going to the OR are pretty high before the attending reads me out the next day. So you have to be very confident in your reads. Like you have to be like ready for the team to take action on a patient. So in that way, it can be stressful too. It's very different than nights on a different specialty for sure. Should you do residency in the state where you want to settle or do fellowship? So I would say that depends on like what you want. Some people like to move around. If you know where you want to settle and things like that, then absolutely you should just go there for your residency if you can. If you want to do fellowship in a certain place, you can definitely plan where you want to do your residency so that you get that spot. That's kind of what I did. I knew I wanted to go to a big institution, so I went to a residency that I knew would set me up for that. And you can look at their fellowship matches in the past to see where people have matched, because you'll probably kind of take that same road. In terms of, some people compare the life of a radiologist like taking step every single day. That's an exaggeration. I don't think that that's true. you definitely see like bread and butter cases every day. So like the same 20, 25 things are going to be what you see every day. And of course, you have to be ready for the zebras, but that goes for any specialty. I don't think that we definitely see more zebras in radiology because we're imaging. Like, what's the first thing that any specialist does? You know, you usually just get imaging. And so as a radiologist, you'll definitely see more zebras. But I don't think it's like taking step every single day. Like when I get a zebra, it's like, whoa, interesting case. This is so exciting. It's not like, oh, this is normal. So I think that's an exaggeration. I mean, we definitely have to know a lot more. Like we have to know every pathology in the whole body, but I think all of us rely on the internet and Google just like, you know, other people. So I think that's an exaggeration. How is the interview experience at community programs different from university programs? So every program is different, and every, you know, community program will be different from other community programs. I think in general, the major differences are in the amount of research time and like research power that the institution has. Usually community hospitals have less than university programs, and the attendings might be like stretched more thin, so they may not have as much time to help you with research, but those are usually the main things. And then in terms of breakdown of like how the rotations go, that can differ. So like if it's modality based versus organ systems based. And just in general, like at community programs, the radiologists are more commonly like general radiologists, or they do multiple subspecialties. Even if it's not just one, they might do 2 or 3. University programs, the attendings are usually much more subspecialized. They just do chest, they just do mammo, things like that. So it can differ in those ways as well. But I think the research thing is probably the biggest way that they differ. Am I planning to do private practice or academics, and what are the major differences? So private practice versus academics, they are pretty different. So private practice, usually in radiology, they're looking for people who are willing to do more than one subspecialty. So for example, my attending, so I'm at a community academic hybrid, and they're private practice. So all of the attendings, while they are all fellowship trained, they all do like multiple different subspecialties. So like one person will do chest and mammo and MSK, for example, versus academics. If you want to do just breast imaging forever, you would probably go to some university program because they are the places where you're most likely to do just one subspecialty. I probably would prefer to do academics because I don't really want to do lots of different subspecialties. I would prefer to just do one. And I also find in radiology now, like there's so much to know and keep up with in terms of technology, in terms of protocols, in terms of like, you know, follow-up for patients, that it's becoming more and more difficult to be a generalist. So I think academics is definitely the way of the future. People are going to become more and more subspecialized. But I think also a major difference between private practice and academics is the volume that you're expected to read. Private practice, you're expected to read a much higher volume. And so you'll definitely notice a difference in like the type of reads that you get between private practice and academics. You can definitely take more time with each study in academics. And then of course, research, if you want to do research, academics is the way to go. Usually you get some time each week to do academics, maybe not every week, but every month to do research work and go to conferences, things like that, which is less common in private practice. Okay, should you go to and also private practice generally you get paid more. So a lot of people like that, obviously, but there is also more call, I think, in private practice because it's usually less radiologists, so you have to cover more, and also that helps you earn more money. Should you go to residency where there are fellows or where there are no fellows? Well, I am biased, so I think you should go to a place where there are no fellows. But if you are going to go to a place with fellows, ask and see who gets like, you know, the first pick at doing all the procedures, doing the cases, things like that. Because generally when there are no fellows, you can do all the procedures yourself as a resident, which is really helpful because then when you go to a fellow run place as a fellow, then you get to do the procedures there too. And you're going to come out of your training very, very well versed in basically anything hands-on. And same goes for just the cases that are on the list. A lot of times the fellows get the first pick of like what they want to see. So if you're on a body rotation, for example, all the MRIs might go to the fellows because that's what they want to read, and then you're going to be stuck with all the body CTs, which is like kind of it's less fun than doing the MRI versus like at my program where we have no fellows, we get to read whatever we want, which is pretty nice. But yeah, I think the major difference is in the procedures because you get to be hands-on. How heavily are step scores weighted? So there are definitely differences between programs. There are some places that say that they look at every application, and then there are places that have a cutoff, and then there are some places that say they look at every application then actually have a cutoff. So I think that a lot of places do have a cutoff, unfortunately, unless you have like a really amazing experience or life story, or I don't even know what else. That if you have a step score below, I can make up a number, 230, 240, they're not even going to look at your application. So in that sense, it is like a gateway to get your application at least to the program director if you have a good step score. If you don't have a good step score, that doesn't mean you're not going to match. It just means that you have to prove that you've done something to warrant getting an interview. So that means either, improving your step 2, that can help. And of course, talking about it in your personal statement also helps. So that way they know that you're acknowledging that you have a lower step score. But unfortunately in radiology, there are a lot of programs. So different programs, like higher end programs will have a cutoff, and lower. I scored a 273 step 1. That's pretty amazing. Well, I'll come back to that question. Okay, so in any case, I think that step scores are very important, but they're not the end all be all of your residency application. And if you have enough stuff on your application plus an explanation for like if you have a lower score, then you're going to be fine. There are so many programs, you're going to be absolutely fine. Okay, advice for DO medical students. That's a really great question. And I know that there are so many DO medical students applying this year, and that's pretty exciting. As far as advice, I would say the main thing for anyone this year, especially DO applicants and IMGs, is to reach out to programs early and reach out to residents in programs that you're interested in. Look for programs that already have DOs, that already have IMGs, because they are going to be just, they clearly are already open to having DOs and IMGs. I'm really sorry if you're going through you feel like you're not getting interviews or something like that. Like that's just unfortunate. It's just I don't even know how to explain it, but it is what it is, I think, at this point. And you just have to reach out, make that effort. And if you're not already a 4th year and you're a 3rd year, then start making those connections now. Even if you're a 1st or 2nd year, make those connections now and start talking to residents or, people that are in the areas that you want to be in, so that they already have you on their radar, so that when you apply, you can say, hey, I applied, I know we talked, whatever. And making connections is probably the best advice that I have for you. Obviously take your USMLEs so that you can be on the same playing field, and that's it. Just be very friendly, and if things start to open up and you can rotate through, absolutely rotate through, because even if programs don't have any DOs, there's always the first one, and that could be you. And I think there's no reason not to at least try and apply. Okay, so let's read this cheesecake. Let's see. I scored a 273 and a 277. So when I go to an interview date and they say your step score doesn't matter now that you're here, what does that mean? No problem, Lopa. Okay, so what that means is that, and actually this is true. So when I interview someone, first, I have to review their application, and I pretty much have like a score in my head for their application. Like, do I think this out of 10, like 5, 6, 7, 8, like what do I think? Was it a good application or not? And obviously if you have a 270 something, it's going to look favorably on you. But if you come to the interview and you're someone who I can't engage with in a conversation, who doesn't seem interested, etc., then that's going to be very important to me. And conversely, if someone has like a very low step 1 score, but they have a great conversation with me, you guys at the end of the day might end up with the same like feeling, and like I might end up feeling like both of you guys are like 7s, for example, in my head. I think that's what it means. It just means that like your interview is still very important. Your application is one part of like the whole thing, But obviously, ultimately, you want to know if you can work with someone. And a 273 step one doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be easy to work with. Doesn't mean you're not, but the interview is just as important. I think that's what it means. Hopefully that kind of answered your question. What separates good applications from mediocre applications? Isn't that the question? So I think that an amazing application really tells the story of someone and how you found radiology and how you found even medicine. And I can like see that from your application. So the personal statement is obviously a great place to tell that story. I love reading about people with different experiences, with interesting experiences. And I know that most med students don't have like a crazy interesting past. It's just like I decided to do medicine. I took all the prerequisites and then I chose radiology. But finding even one interesting story or experience from all of that training can really help. You just want to have something that like sticks in the interviewer's mind from reading your application. So the one good place would be your personal statement. That's the best place to highlight like your favorite thing on your application. And then going through your volunteer experiences, things like that. Honing your interest into a few things and then kind of diving really deep into those things is also important. And I think that makes a good application. So instead of saying like you volunteered 4 hours here and 8 hours here and 3 hours there, saying that like, you know, I spent so much time doing this and I loved it so much that I decided to like do this other offshoot of that. And then I became the leader, you know, things like that, where it's all connected. And you can really tell from just reading like the volunteer section that this person is interested in, I don't know, Habitat for Humanity. I think that's better than doing like one Habitat for Humanity project and then one project with this other random, like Be the Match, bone marrow drive, things like that. Like I think building a good application is all about showing who you are, showing your interests, and you have to really build those during your medical school career for us to see that. So I think for me, that's very important. I also like to see, that you've tried other like multiple things. So I will say, like David, just to answer a little bit of your question, things that I don't like are people that, you know, have like no research or have like no volunteer experiences in medical school. You have to have something to show for that time, right? Like it's 4 years of your life. I feel like you have to do something during that time that shows how you use your time wisely and not just like hanging out and watching TV, which I know we all do, but you just have to have like worthwhile experiences. So things that are memorable in a bad way are people that don't have anything during medical school. Like they have so many things listed, but you know, we can see the dates. Like I can see that it was all from your undergrad and it wasn't from your med school career. And that to me is a red flag. I'm like, what are they going to be doing during their free time? Things that are good. So I think a lot of the good applications, now I have to, like you said, not give away too many identifiers. The ones obviously I'm thinking of are people that we've interviewed already. Things that I like to see, I will say like, tell me about how you found radiology and how you, even if it like for me, it was through peds. So like I told that story and I think I repeated that story to every single interviewer. I don't know if it was memorable or not, but at least I felt like I had a story to tell in my application. I think those are things that make them more memorable. Other things that are interesting, obviously people that are just fun to talk to, people that smile and like are very energized, and that are excited to be there, people who have clearly done research about your program. But David, if you have more questions about that, I don't want to say too much, like obviously about people that I find interesting, because I think it will get too specific and I don't want that. But negative red flags I can remember, so I've already mentioned those. So sounds like, and I think I answered that question. Sounds like once we get an interview, the programs rank based on the interview, and the scores no longer matter anymore for ranking applicants. And every interviewer is different. Every program is different with how they do it. Some of them have like some algorithm they must use, or like, you know, for me personally, and this is like just how I do it, it's based more like on what I thought of your application. And I can just like give you an example. I'm just making this up. So like say someone had an average med school application. They did enough volunteering, they did research, they did a little bit here and there. Average score is, I would give them like 7 to an 8 for their interview or for their application. And then if I loved them, I would probably like go to the higher end of that. And if I really love them, obviously I'll give them a 9 or a 10 because I'm just like, I just want to work with this person. I don't care about their application anymore. If they totally like did not interact with me and I couldn't even say anything to them, then I would probably be like, no, this person is more of a 5. And if they had a red flag on their application, that might bring them a little bit down. Or if there was something amazing on their application, that would bring them a little bit up. So I kind of average both and like think about both of those things in a spectrum. It's very subjective, and I know that every single person will have a different way that they score. So I can only tell you how I do it, but for me, that's how I feel. And so my point is that it's not that the application no longer matters. It just, depending on how the interview goes, it can matter more or less. And depending on your application, it can also matter more or less. What about introverts? So that's a great question. I'm like getting out of breath here. So I think that for introverts, the main thing is that you really have to practice. And honestly, it's the same. It's probably slightly more difficult in the virtual setting because it's less natural, but you really just have to practice the interview. And if you think about if you were going in person, how many mock interviews you would do, it's the same thing. You have to do the mock interviews, you have to practice. And I always encourage people, especially if you're a little bit shy, to record yourself, because you may not realize like your body language, you may not realize, like if I have a tendency like furrow my brows or, like kind of look uninterested, those are things that I will see when I record myself. So if you're an introvert, I think you really need to practice more. It is definitely more difficult, but you have an advantage with the virtual interviews, because if you are someone who gets nervous, it's easy to put a sticky note on my screen and on your screen, and no one will know but you. So like if you have specific things you want to talk about, or if you have an answer already for like, tell me about yourself, then you can have that on a sticky note and on your screen and no one is going to know. So it's positive and negative, but I think you just definitely have to practice more as an introvert. You will have to make more of an effort, and you may end up even like more tired by the end of the day because you're making such an effort, but practice will make perfect. It'll get easier, and yeah, just keep it up. And that's all I can tell you is just, it is difficult. And as someone who is interviewing, I can tell when I'm interviewing with an introvert because they will not talk to me as much. And it's definitely like more awkward. So I think if you are naturally more introverted, make those notes and try to like continually look at the camera, smile, like remind yourself of these things because it does matter. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so David is saying radiology PD at a good school in Cali told me 25% step score, 25% clerkship grades, 50% interview experience. Exactly. So I think everything kind of factors in, and everyone will be slightly different, but it just, each interview, and even at one program, the interviewers might be different. So just depends. This is super fun though. And there's 22 people here, which is like really exciting. Thanks guys for asking questions. Did I skip anyone's questions? I don't think so, but this is super fun. Okay, so why don't we go back to like more Reddit questions, and as things come up, just like let me know. Yeah, anytime. Honestly, I hope that this is helpful for you guys. I can do it more often. Let's see. How do you recommend applicants way chill, laid back residency? Oh, I see. Versus more prestigious, hardworking residency. Okay, so that goes to like prestige and things like that. So first of all, you have to figure out like what you want in a program. Do you want a place? If you care about prestige, figure out why you care about prestige. Do you just care about the name? Because I don't think that that's gonna be like a good reason to go to a place. I would say look at the resources of every program, figure out what you want in your career, and go based on that. I picked my residency not because it was more chill, laid back, or prestigious or anything, literally because I wanted to be in a city and I wanted a good fellowship match. Those were the things that I looked at. Those were important to me. So you have to figure out what's important to you. Prestige is nice, is great, and it will definitely get you into the fellowship spots and into like jobs that maybe you want. You might go to a prestigious place, academic, and then realize you want to go into private practice. Ultimately, then maybe it doesn't matter. It's hard to say now, like what will matter in your future. I think the most important thing is networking and meeting people and getting involved for those reasons. And you can do that from a small place, from a big place, etc. The main thing is figuring out what you're looking for. And that's probably not the answer you wanted, but I think that's the best answer that I can give you, is just figure out what you're interested in, what you want in your future, and figure out the program that's the right fit. Honestly, sometimes you may find personalities are very, like, I feel like the personalities at different programs are like very specific. Like, I chose my program because I really vibed with like the people there, and it had nothing to do with prestige or like community program, academic. I just ended up liking the people. And so that's why I went there. And I think on virtual interviews, you can still figure out the type of people that you vibe with. Like, I feel like I can still figure out, even for fellowship, the fit. You know what I mean? Like, I can still figure out, like, I like the people here. The people here seem like different to me, things like that. So fit is very, very important. Can you write the program after the interview that I love the program and ranking you as my top? Okay. So you can. The caveat is that you haven't finished your interviews yet. What I always suggest is, if you liked the program, to always send them a thank you note and say, I loved your program. I loved your program. Like, I've been thinking about your program since before I interviewed, and then I interviewed and it just confirmed all of my beliefs that like you have X, Y, and Z that I'm looking for. And I am looking, like, I would feel very honored to match at your program, something like that. But don't say like number one until the end of the interviews, because I feel like then you could potentially be dishonest, and you could find yourself in a situation where you actually want to send your number one interview to like, or your number one I love you letter to a different program, and then you don't want to screw your future self over either. So just weigh that. Obviously, yes, be honest always, because the radiology community is really small, and I don't want anyone to like, talk and say, oh, this person said something that they didn't mean. So I think with a thank you note, you should say like, I expected to really enjoy your program. I really liked this about your program before, and after the interview, this just confirmed everything. But don't say number one until the very end. And that also gives you a chance to email them closer to the rank list submission, and then maybe they'll remember you. So you can also use that to your advantage. And let's see. IMGs, increasing your chances. I talked about this a little bit earlier. I think the main thing that you can do is to reach out to programs and make connections as early as you can. So like, look for programs that are IMG friendly, look for programs that are in areas that are IMG friendly, and just make connections with the residents, do research with them if you can, rotate with them if you can, if this is like in the next couple of years. But yeah, make as many personal connections, one-on-one connections. Advice for your M1 self. That's interesting. I'm pretty happy with how everything turned out. I know for me, I was always really nervous about like putting myself out there. And if you actually look at like my college, like to my med school application, I didn't have like that much leadership experience at all because I was too afraid. So if it was like my early M1 self, I would have just told myself like, just go for all the things that you want to go for without worrying, because everything will be fine. Other advice for my M1 self: study more. You can always study more. But and probably also find radiology earlier, like explore other specialties. Go shadow someone in the reading room just for like 1 or 2 hours in the weekday. I think med students, you forget how easily you can access these things. You just have to email someone. Most of the time, everyone is open to like having you in the reading room. Obviously, COVID is a little bit different, but normally we don't mind if someone wants to just come and watch us for a couple hours, especially if you're a med student at our institution. Absolutely. And Rotate through subspecialties. Don't just go to the main reading room. Go to breast imaging, go to MSK, go to IR, see everything. People will be really open to that. And so that's my best advice for my old self. What's the best way to network with people at programs you want to go to? Social media. That's all I have to say about that. Twitter, go to as many virtual open houses as you can, set up Zoom calls if you have to. Don't be afraid to ask for a meeting. Most residents are pretty open to it. We all want to talk to med students and help you guys figure out where you want to go. We know it's hard for you this year. How does the setup matter? Oh man, I don't think it matters that much. I think as long as you have a good connection with the internet so that I can hear you and see you, your lighting, I mean, it just makes you probably feel more confident, but it doesn't ultimately matter that much. And this is literally you can literally see my shoe rack in the back. This is my setup for my fellowship interviews. So, I mean, it's what I have. I live in a 1.5 bedroom condo. My husband is pretty much always home when I have my fellowship interview. So this is the only place I can go. I don't judge anyone for their interview setup at all. I don't think anyone really does. Any recommendations for a gap year? That's very person specific. For me, I don't even know what I would have done in my gap year. So for someone like me, I would say no, because I'm not someone who's motivated to do things. But I know that some people love to teach, and they did Teach for America, and they did all of these other things. So if you're that person who really wants to get these other experiences, wants to travel, then you should do it. It can also be a good thing to put on your application in terms of this is how I found radiology, if that's true, or I found whatever specialty. But I don't think that I don't think that I encourage it or discourage it to anybody. It's just a totally personal decision. If I match at a place I don't plan on working at in the future, could a fellowship where I want to settle? Yes. A lot of people do that, actually. That's probably the main way that people find their jobs, is where they end up going for fellowship. So that's absolutely, totally 100% okay. And 1 year is enough networking. And the attendings at your fellowship know that you're looking for a job, so they will be extra willing to help you find a job in the area. So absolutely. I'm not planning to stay in Boston long term, because my husband wants to move back to California. And yeah, I think it's going to be totally fine. Do programs help to get a prelim spot in the SOAP? I don't know the answer to that, actually. I am not sure how the SOAP works very well, because I didn't have to SOAP. So I don't know if the radiology program will help. I know that the process is very fast. So I would have to think about that and get back to you. I really should learn more about the SOAP, but I don't know who helps with that. To be totally honest, I'm sorry, it's not a great answer, but I don't really have a good answer for the SOAP. This is really fun. It's already been almost 45 minutes, and I haven't, I've just not stopped talking. So this is great. Thanks to everybody for actually coming here. This is awesome. Maybe we can do a couple more questions, and then it's almost 9:15. So if anyone else has any burning questions, just let me know, and I'll answer a couple from the Reddit sheet, and then we can sign off here. Let's see. Someone asked a good question on the Reddit thread, saying do less competitive, is it true Mount Auburn is interviewing 200 people for 3 spots? I haven't done the math for all of our interview spots myself, so I'm going to let you do that. And my program director basically said that we interview all the people who apply with that he wants to interview, in terms of interest, and in terms of who he thinks would be a good fit for our program. So if it's up to him, I'm not going to really comment on that myself, though. Do less competitive programs look at competitive applicants like they won't go to their program? This is, again, program dependent. I've definitely heard that when I was applying, that like less or more competitive applicants don't get the interviews because they think that you're not going to go to their program. But I know that at my program, that's not true. Like, we're not going to not interview you just because you're like a really stellar applicant. And we don't think you would come to our program. We don't do that. So I've heard that. I've heard the rumor. Can I ask this question to the PD during the interview? Sure. Like the soap question? Yeah, you can. I just don't know, like, if you really think you're going to soap, that's like, I feel like you can definitely ask. I just don't want it to come off negatively in the sense that, like, if you feel like you're not gonna match, you know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to think what's the best way to navigate that. Um, you can definitely ask, like, what support do you have in case, applicants have to soap? I think that's a better way to ask than you like saying, I may need to soap. So say, like, what support do you have for applicants that need to soap? I think that's a good way to put it. Yeah, thanks, Adelaide. That's it. Yeah, I think it's mostly like on the med school side that people are helping with the soap. It's more like you and your deans trying to figure out, because if you're only soaping for an intern year, that means I'm not sure how the radiology program would help. But yeah, and yeah, I would suggest asking the radiology program in terms of like, do you have support for that? But I think also if you know where you've matched radiology, then you can just reach out to the intern year programs at that hospital yourself too. If you had to rank letters of recommendation, which would be best based on what rotation and who they are from? So you absolutely have to have at least one radiology letter, and I would say at the most two. In fact, when I see applications with like 3 or 4, I'm more like, like, why did they not rotate through anything else? Like, they should have other letters. The best letters, like the highest rank letters, would be probably, obviously, like, radiology is pretty important, but also medicine or surgery are very helpful to have. And then you can, of course, choose any core specialty, OB, peds, whatever. But I think people like to see either an IM or surgery letter, a radiology letter. If you're doing IR, then an IR letter, and then one other core specialty like OB, peds, family, whatever. But yeah. Okay. We're getting to the end here. I think everyone's running out of questions, which is fine. That's good. I'm glad that I was able to help everyone here. How helpful is getting AOA? You know what I've noticed about AOA? A lot of places are getting rid of AOA. Have you guys noticed that? I feel like in the last few weeks, Cleveland Clinic and I've seen UCLA have both gotten rid of AOA, not Case Western. So I wonder if in the future it's going to be even less important, or if it's like going to stop existing altogether. And someone asked, is it hard to match as a woman? And I'm looking at the Reddit spreadsheet, and the answer is no. I think you are perfectly like the same competitive as your male colleagues. And do most programs require 3 or 4 letters? 3 letters is usually the requirement. I had 4 letters. I also had, but I had a research letter. So what is the best time? Do you expect programs to match candidates similar to prior matches, or are programs going to fill higher or lower? Well, if everyone is applying to more programs, I would say that people are going to rank lower on their list this year, because everyone's going to rank, if you have like 100 of the same stellar applicants applying to every program, then the top 100 of every program is going to be the same mix of 100 people, and they can only match at one spot, just as an example. So everyone, if it goes based on that, will have to rank lower on their list, because you can't, that person can only match at one spot. So my prediction is that every program will have to interview at least a few more people, because they're all going to go lower on their list. When is the best time for sending the love letter? The love letter this year so it's still the same, right? Like, your rank lists are still due at the same time. So I would say, once the interviews are done, probably as soon as the best time to send a love letter, honestly, is once you're done with your interviews and then you have interviewed everywhere and you know exactly what's your number one. That's when I would send it. I would send it right then. I don't know if there's like a sweet spot in terms of like a few weeks before the rank list or anything like that. That, to be honest, I'm not sure. Given COVID and concerns with interview hoarding, yep. How do you think the matches are going to play out? Yeah. Oh, like applicants. Well, applicants fall lower on the ranks. It's possible. I mean, again, so the same thing goes the other way too. Like if everyone is applying to everywhere, then it's definitely like we're all going to fall lower on our rank lists, I think, because we're all interviewing at more places. So just the way the math works out, unfortunately, that I would say you should be prepared to fall lower on your rank list. Otherwise, why would people say to apply to more programs, right? So I hope it's not true, but I mean, I know that everyone is interviewing at more places because you can literally interview for one program in the morning and another in the afternoon. And, we can't do that. We couldn't do that before. So regarding networking in radiology, are residents and radiologists usually quite receptive? Yes, totally. I think that you should definitely message people on social media or email them. Even email is fine. I don't think that people will like ghost you on purpose. Honestly, most of the time, if I don't respond to something, it's because either I saw it and I didn't have a second to respond and then I forgot about it, or I just like it got buried in all of the other things. So just reach out again. I don't think that email versus Twitter, either one is like better or worse in terms of getting a response. It just may be like the timing wise. I'm going to graduate a year later. Yep. As long as you have this like explained in your personal statement or somewhere in your ERAS, it doesn't matter. Like if you're graduating later because of rotation delays because of COVID and you explain that, then that will not be like seen negatively, but you have to be clear about that. You have to be clear because otherwise it's very easy to think that like something happened in terms of like a red flag in your medical school career or something like that. So just be very clear in your personal statement or somewhere in your ERAS application that that's what happened. Is DMing on Twitter? Oh, wait. What? Step one being pass fail. Will it be harder for IMDs to get radiology? Yes, because it's going to be harder for everyone since we all have to find different ways to differentiate ourselves. But yes, I think DOs and IMGs will have even more difficulty because you have to prove yourself even more. So knowing people at programs is going to be extra important. What do you think is a safe number to match of programs to match? What's the normal? Is it around 12? I feel like 15 or 16, maybe a few more, but that's based on just my head and not based on like numbers or math or anything. DMing on Twitter or social media, is it acceptable? Yes, of course. Message lots of residents. We are all open to it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be on social media. And if our DM, like the DMs are open and you can DM us, then absolutely we're open to it. Oh, ERAS applications did not increase significantly. That's good. Then probably stay around like the normal number. That's great. Should I have dropped my interview invites or hoarded? I stayed at 15, but you've dropped 16. I think that 15 is fine. I don't think you needed 31 by any means. I don't think that anyone needs to hoard. I feel like you know what kind of applicant you are. I know it's hard for you to know like when you're in the moment, but you can pretty much tell based on like the NRMP data, like are you average, are you above average, or are you below average? And then you can use that information to figure out like how many interviews you need. And then of course, like doing mock interviews you can help figure out if you are very good with interviews or if your application might help you and your interview might hurt you. Like you can figure out what kind of applicant you are and just go based on that, go based on the NRMP data. I think 15 interview invites is plenty. I don't think you need to go on more than that, but I don't know exactly what type of applicant you are, so it's hard to know because you can if you're a really weak applicant and if you apply to only like a certain number of programs, then that can really hurt you. But I'm sure that if you got 31 interviews, I'm positive that you're a solid applicant. what is YOG? I don't know what that means. Is that really a problem if you have a good CV? Like if I have a residency, year of graduation? Yes, because I know that like when we're reading applications and you graduated a long time ago, it can be a little bit difficult. Like, why did you not start your residency earlier? Like, was there an issue? These are the questions, I'm not saying personally this is how I feel, but like these are the types of questions that come up in terms of like, why did you not start earlier? Or what have you been doing with that time? Things of that nature. So I think that the further and further number of years that you have, then like it does become more and more difficult to match. So try to apply like ASAP, because the longer you wait, the harder it'll be. Do you think the job market will stay good? Yeah, I do. I do think the job market will stay good for the next year, even though there's a recession. It's always cyclical. And what you have to realize is like, even now, I'm a third year. I still have 2.5 years until I will begin attending, right? Because I have 1.5 years plus my fellowship year. So like the job market in 2.5 years from now is really what I care about. And I have no way of predicting that. I'm pretty sure it's going to be fine. And if not, I'll struggle for like a few more months and then I'll find a job right away. It's very cyclical. And there's no way, like as a med student, there's no way to know when you become an attending what the job market will be like. But even during the recession, like I feel like everyone still finds a job. Maybe it's not like your first choice, but you will still find a job. Did programs give preference to local students? Do you think that they will look to match locals? Will you join our Discord? I don't know your Discord. If you send me a link, I'll join the Discord happily. And local, so, I'm pretty worried about that myself for fellowship, but I don't know if applicants want to stay local more than usual. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just because the programs will rank, even if they were to rank like local people higher, does it mean that the local people want to stay? I don't really know. So there's definitely like that concern that people they know they will rank higher. But I know that like when I meet someone, it doesn't really matter like if it's someone I know versus someone who I don't know, like, because I just don't, to me, it's more just like they're probably both good. And I don't know whether the person I actually know wants to even stay here or not. So what does it matter to me? What do I mean by cyclical? So the way that we describe the job market, and actually, so I just interviewed Dr. Gokhale from, she's a pediatric radiologist. I just interviewed her today, and she's the one who even described it to me. But it's true, it's a sine wave. So there are going to be times when there are a ton of jobs, and then there are going to be times when there are not a lot of jobs. But it's impossible to know like when this sine wave will be occurring. And just because the job market sucks for like 6 months to a year, that means that it's going to be fine in the next 6 months to a year. So you're going to be fine. If you have a tough time finding a job straight out of fellowship, maybe wait 6 months to a year, take whatever job you can, and then you can always change once the job market opens up to a place that you want to go. That's what I mean by cyclical. It's always up and down. And that's not just in radiology, that's in everything. It's just like, I don't know, in radiology, people really care a lot about the job market, but realize that radiology is not going anywhere. People need imaging now more than ever. So we're going to be around for a long time. How to write. Okay, so do you mean like a personal statement or letters of recommendation for both internal medicine or radiology? Because for both, you should, what I recommend is getting different letters for radiology and for internal medicine, and different personal statement for radiology and internal medicine, because you can assign different personal you can assign different personal statements into different programs. So you should be able to put radiology personal statement for radiology programs and medicine personal statement for medicine programs. So you can write two separate ones. As a whole, locals are probably more likely to want to stay local versus people who aren't. Not necessarily. I'm from Michigan. There are like 8 programs in Michigan, and I wanted to get out of Michigan. So I think it's just person specific. And I don't think that people who are local, unless they are like, I want to go here, I've done research with these people and I would have rotated with them, etc. Like those are the people that will obviously like are more likely to stay. But I don't think that otherwise that they have like a more more higher chance. Oh my God, I'm like losing my English skills at this point. I don't think that otherwise they have like a higher chance of going somewhere if you're a solid applicant. If we get an interview at a higher ranked program and don't consider ourselves high tier, are we safety spots? No, you actually have a chance. This is what I was saying earlier, that like once you interview, you can totally like blow people away with like your demeanor, with your excitement, etc., with your reasons for wanting to go somewhere. And no, just because you have lower score, and honestly, you don't even know the type of people that they're interviewing. Like you don't know if they're only interviewing people with like 260s, right? So I think the best thing you can do is like, if you want to go to that program, just kill the interview day and rank it high. Who cares? If that's where you want to go, like you're not it doesn't matter where they rank you. You should definitely just plan to kill the interview day and just just rank it wherever you want. Because you don't know who they're interviewing. You might end up being like someone they really love. So yeah. Where to start radiology research for an undergrad? Are you an undergrad? Wow. You can start to do radiology research in any radiology department. So if you live anywhere near a hospital, just reach out to the radiology department, reach out to the chief residence, the program coordinator, and say, are there any projects that I can help with? And honestly, usually there are tons, and residents are always looking for people to help with data collection and things like that. So yes. Oh, thank you, Dad, for chiming in. Radiology market will remain hot for a foreseeable future. Yes, that is my dad, and he is a seasoned radiologist and knows what he's talking about. So seriously, just think about imaging. Like imaging is not going anywhere. So I don't think anyone has to worry about a job. You're going to find a job wherever you want in what you want. Maybe you don't know and you take a job and you think it's perfect. You might have to change your job later. So you never know what your future holds. You just have to do what you love and you will figure it out. Okay, it is 9:30. I think we should stop for now, but you all know my social media at Yasha Gupta MD on Instagram or on Twitter. So please reach out if I didn't answer your question or if you have more questions. We can do this again. This was super fun. Thank you everybody for coming, and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye. Oh wait, there's another question. Okay, Hamid, I think you should just message me on Twitter because I think we should sign off now. Cheesecake, can you please send me the link to the Discord? I will join the Discord. I'm happy to, but someone has to like send me a link because otherwise I won't know what to do. Oh my goodness. This is awesome. Honestly, this was really fun. I'm so glad that all of you came. This is more people than I expected to show up. So yes, perfect, Hamid. I will talk to you. Who is AI? I don't know who you are, AI, but okay, perfect. Thank you. What did you ask? Do you actually think it's a level playing field once you get an interview? Yes, I do. I do think it's a level playing field once you get an interview. Does that mean the interview is the most significant factor? I think it's some sort of breakdown, but anyways, I've answered this question already in this, so you can watch it back and see what I said. Do more of these. Happy to. Totally will. And I agree. I can't see the link either. So just message me on Twitter, Cheesecake, or if you want to stay anonymous, just message me through something else. We'll figure it out. Alrighty. Bye, everybody. Good night.